So we've decided to drop the fuel tank. So to do so, we got to get some gas out of it because it's completely full, 75, 80 gallons, whatever it holds. So fortunately for my situation, my fuel pump still works. So I can just pump it out. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that here in just a second. But your situation may differ. You may not have a working fuel pump. So if you don't have a working fuel pump, how are you going to get your fuel out? If you got a Class A motorhome, let me show you your options. Hang on. Well, you see I'm back here at my Onan generator. So here's one option you could do. Say, for instance, you had a full tank of gas and you wanted to get some of it out or most of it out. You could use your fuel pump on your generator. You just have to take your line loose either here at the carburetor or underneath here at the fuel pump. Right there's the fuel pump. Either way, then once you did that, you just hit your prime button and hear it pumping away. Now you'd have to put your little wedge your little something on the back side to hold it there the whole time. Then you could pump it out probably to down to about a quarter tank. Get a lot of the fuel out of it, not all of it. And there's the other option is, at least on the Workhorse chassis, you have the filler neck. You have one on each side. So you could, remove the rubber hose. You got a rubber hose like ours. You can see the filler cap. We got the rubber hose going on this side. On the other side, it's just a plug. You take the plug out, drop a fuel line in it, siphon it out, fill it up that way. So it's a couple different options as far as getting the fuel out. Now let me show you how I'm going to pump it out on this one. All right, you see I've got two of these fuel pressure gauges, and just show you the difference here. I've removed this part off of this one, and this is just a fitting off of the carburetor, off a lawnmower carburetor. I think it's maybe 1/8 pipe thread. It's got a barb fitting on the other side, so I screwed that in there. And then down here on our fuel rail, of course, for my setup, I've added a electrical sending unit, so I know what my fuel pressure is at all times. So we just unscrew that. Now, you gotta be mindful and be careful of this. Make sure your key is off. You're not smoking. There's no flame, no sparks, well ventilated, and all that kind of stuff, because you will get a little bit of fuel. You can put a rag around here and absorb it, because there's going to be a little bit of pressure on that rail. Get that out of the way, and we're just going to screw this in here. Yeah, doing everything but one hand here today, of course. Okay, it's good and snug. Took a little while. I got it good and snug. All right, so now we're ready to start pumping fuel out. Now I got me a big old long hose. I'm going to show you where it's going to go. So next we got to do, well, first of all, I have the relay pulled on the fuel pump. Fuel pump relay is removed, so no fuel will not get pressurized. Turn on the key. Key is on. There's no fuel pumping anywhere. And you see what I got? Got this nice long hose. I don't know, it's about 40 foot long. Go outside with it. Got the little Honda Fit here. We're going to open up the cap. It's near empty. And I'm going to stick that in there. Alright. Now here's the tricky part. Not tricky, but the trick. We'll call it the trick. So, I get enough light. Can you see? Let me turn on some light. Make this better. Oh, much better. Oh, now. Just like a professional would do it. So, normally, a fuel pump relay sits in here like this. So I removed that, and because I looked at the relay, I can tell by the schematic back here which wire I need to jump. So I know what I need to jump is these two terminals here, that one and the bottom one. I just took me a piece of copper wire and kind of beat it flat to kind of make it the same shape that the relay is, because you don't want to jam anything too large in there to distort these pins. So as soon as I put this in here, my fuel pump is now running, pumping fuel into the car. Now, let's go right here and I'll show you. Here she goes, pumping up a storm. Now, I'm gonna go back to and show you the sound it makes. You may not, because the engine's not running. It's usually you never can hear your fuel pump running, but you see if you can hear it. So that's the sound of your working fuel pump. But normally you got your engine running, you'll never hear that. So I'm gonna let that pump down, and then we'll get to lowering this fuel tank. All right, you see we're under the RV, because first of all, when you're under your RV, if you're tackling this little project, you want to be safe about it. Luckily, I've got the Workhorse W24 chassis. It's got plenty of clearance. I mean, I did lower the jacks just a little bit, just to give me a little extra clearance. But even if I didn't have the jacks down, I'd still have enough room to do this work. But some RVs don't have that kind of clearance. So, you know, jack it up, use jack stands, be safe about it. You know, think worst case scenario, you're under here and you know, a hydraulic line breaks and the jacks go up, or tires blow out, whatever. Just be safe about it. So anyway, got the safety speech out of the way. Let me show you my ideal. So anyway, what holds this big giant fuel tank up? Now I've forgotten. Is it 75 or 80 gallon tank, and it's got still got about a half a tank of fuel in it. So it's got a lot of weight. I need to calculate that and see how much weight's in this thing. So my plan is, because actually I got to think about this is the first fuel tank I've ever removed out of a vehicle. I've changed fuel pumps several times, but I've always had access from the top. So I'm not a professional. I don't know how other people do it. This is just the way I'm going to do it. I don't have no fancy tools, no big fancy jacks. Of course, that would take one big giant jack to get this thing down. So, and I'm not going to take it all the way down. I just want to lower it enough to get to the pump. So you can see we've got these 4 large straps that support this tank. So my plan is to put in this 4 pieces of all thread like I've got here. I'm going to show you how it works. We'll put those 4 pieces of all thread on the rear strap and front strap. Once I do that, then I will remove the 2 center straps. And let me show you how cool this is going to work. Let me get in position here. Well, before I do that, let me show you all what I came up with. I've got 4 pieces of all thread, and at the top, I've got a flat washer and a locking nut. Right up there, flat washer, locking nut. So it will spin, but not unscrew itself. It'll stay put. And then I got this nut, just supports it. So as I spin it with my drill, it'll just slowly lower the strap down. Easy peasy. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's see how this works. Let's try it with one hand. I'm going to put this on here. We're going to give it a little juice. How's that? Is that pretty cool? Then when I go to raise the tank up, switch gears, raise the tank back up. So, because I know I'll have to do it in stages, you know, like an inch on each corner, work my way around. But first of all, I got to get this little weird, it's like a T-bolt, I don't know what you call it thing. But first of all, I got to go around all 4 corners and remove these, and to get my pieces of all thread in. So let me go around and get that done. Okay, so all you're gonna need for this is a 1/2 inch drive ratchet, 3/4 socket. I've already broke that loose. Take that off. And then I need to take this nut loose and get this little T-bolt crazy thing out of the way. So let me get that unscrewed. All right, let's get that loose. Box. Get that crazy thing out of the way because I don't know what it's called. And now let me get my all thread set up here. Take my all thread, I'm going to put it up in the hole. And once I get it up there, I'm going to put my lock on there. Just like that. If I can see it, there you go. So let me get that done. Next step. Okay, now tip for you, go ahead and get the non-locking nut already screwed down here, about 4 inches or so. And then on these, you want to jam them together. You know, these are the long non-locking nuts. And take your 2 wrenches and jam them good and tight, so that way you can use the drill to screw it up and down. It's not going to move anywhere. So then you come to your strap, get on there, then you come up and just get it started on that locking nut. Of course, I'm going to need 2 hands for that. I'll be right back. Okay, so see what I've done? I've got my bolt up through there, just got it going past the locking material, so it'll stay put, and a washer under it so it'll spin freely. And now I've got that done. No problem at all. And I just got to go around, do it to the front strap, and I'll snug these back up. Then I'll just remove these center ones completely and we'll be able to start lowering this. But of course I got to get some these connections. I got a ground cable to remove. I got the fuel tube to unhook. So a few more things to do, but we're getting there. So I'm about to put in my last piece of all thread, and I failed to mention what dimensions and stuff I'm using. I bought 2 pieces of 3-foot all thread. This is 1/2 inch diameter coarse thread. And then so you'll need 2 of those, cut them in half. That gives you 2 18-inch pieces. You'll need 4 locking nuts for the top, like that. You'll need 4 flat washers, and you need a total of 12 non-locking nuts. And that's all it takes to make this little kit. Okay, well you can see I got my 4 pieces of all thread installed. Still got the 2 center straps tightened up. Haven't loosened those yet. My next step is trying to get got to get my ground strap off. We're going to need a 9/16 socket and wrench on that. Those 2 bolts there, 1/2 inch socket, 1/2 inch wrench. And then it's going to take a 1/4 inch socket to get those 2 clamps loose, and a long extension. And I'm hoping I can work this pipe back and get it disconnected from the fuel tank. That's my hope. So let's get to working on that. Okay, so this part took a little finesse, but I finally got it loose. I used to got all those brackets and stuff loose, getting that pipe loose. So, of course, you gotta figure this thing hasn't been off in 18, 19 years. So I got this little, let me show you so you can see the whole bar. It's a little pry bar. So I was able to get that just under the rubber, because I've got it, you can see it's pushed away now. When I started working it, and I broke it free from the neck. Now that one I couldn't kind of get behind, so I couldn't get it broke free from the tank side. I got that broke free. So to get the small line, the vent line loose, I just took me a pair of channel locks and twisted it and broke it free from the pipe. So once I got both hoses broke free from the pipes, the vent hose broke free from this pipe, the fill hose broke loose from the tank pipe. Then the next trick was getting another pry bar, coming right here, and prying on that bracket. When I pried on that bracket, it pushed against those pipes and popped them right out. So all in all, that worked out a whole lot easier than I almost thought it was going to. Alright, so the next step is to take this line loose. This is our line going to the Onan generator. Get my camera turned the right way. So I'm going to take that loose, and be mindful when you take these lines loose. Sometimes they have a little bit of fuel in them. I got a few drops when I took that line loose, but not much. Because, well, back to this line, we got to remember this thing's almost 20 years old. And they can get dry and brittle, start sucking air if they ever crack on you. So, and this is the one only time you'll be able to get a chance to change it, just while that tank is down. So that's what I'll be doing. They'll be getting a brand new hose put on it. Alright, so I think I'm done with this side. I've just got to go to the other side and remove the plug on it. Alright, another tip for you. Once again, this flat bar really worked out nice to get that plug off. Where'd the plug go? Alright, here it is. To get this piece off. It's just a plug. Getting that flat bar up there just to push it and get it broke free. And the smaller hose, the trick to it, getting it free. Where'd my channel locks go? I'm upside down, can't find my tools. Hang on, I've lost my channel locks. Okay, I found them. Alright, so the trick to that, come on, get a little more light here. Is to reach up in here. Sorry for all the moving around. But you reach up in here and block all the light, of course. Hang on, turn the light on. For pity's sake. This ain't working for Hoot, is it? Try it like this. Alright, see that piece there? Get your channel locks on it. There you go, get your channel locks on there. and just twist it, break it free. Once you break that small vent line loose, then it will come off fairly easy for you. There we go, almost off, a little bit more. All right, I did get the little dude off. I didn't need channel locks, just needed 2 hands. So now I think I've got everything loose I need to get loose. Now we just take these 2 middle straps off and proceed. All right, you see both center straps are removed. The only thing's holding it up is the front and rear strap. And something I want to point out to you, I know I've talked to a fellow who was up north, and his fuel tank started leaking underneath the strap. I guess, you know, road salt and stuff can get under there, get it rusting, and you get a pinhole. And that could be an expensive job, having to replace your tank. I'm thinking he may have had his repaired, possibly. But there's a big job removing and everything. So if you live up north, got a lot of rust under your RV, it might be wise to, you know, take like 1 strap off at a time and inspect it. If you see a lot of rust between that rubber and the tank, maybe sand it, prime it real good, let it dry, and reassemble it. Could save you the price of a new fuel tank later. All right, so let's start loosening a few of these all thread pieces and see if this tank will begin to lower. Okay, so I've loosened the first, the 2 up front slightly. I've got that one loosened. All right, I'm gonna loosen this one. We'll see how much drop we get. If I go the right way, there we go, try it. Okay. So I'm gonna go back up front, loosen those again, and just keep inching my way down. That's all I need. All right, you camera, you're still recording? Did you get my best side? Okay, there we have a fuel pump right in front of us. That wasn't so hard at all, now was it? Well, as you can see, I loosened it some more. Got it down there really good. So pretty easy to get to. It's not like it's on the ground or anything, but I can get to access to everything, I believe, from side to side. Right there's my lines. But next thing I got to do is get all that cleaned up really good before I go taking anything loose. I don't want no creeping crud falling into my tank. So let's see what we're going to do next. All right, I took an air compressor and blew some of the crud off, because it's got 18 years of dirt on top of this tank, but I gotta scrub it and do a little bit better. But just to give you a close-up look of how it's set up, you see there's a big snap ring we gotta get loose. But I gotta be careful. If I don't get that good and clean, all that crap's gonna fall right down into my tank. And we want to avoid that at all cost. So, let me do a little more scrubbing and see what we can get it look like. Just to show you the tools I use, I got it. You see it looks a whole lot better. I used me some brake cleaner, a brush, and then I hit it with a blast of air while it was still wet. And that's a great thing about brake cleaner. You know, it's while it's wet, and you hit it with a blast of air, it dries really good and blows off all the crud. So everything now looks pretty clean. I think I can get that connector off, and we'll get that snap ring off. All right, so to get this connector loose, you got this little gray clip. You just squeeze on it, pop it off, get the clip off, and you get a little tab. Push down on it. Push down like that. Pull the connector off. Not real easy. And I'm going to figure out what wire does what, because there's 4 wires. You got 2 wires for your sending unit and 2 wires that actually powers the fuel pump. And I'll make note of those colors, so if you ever need to do any testing, you could, you know, if you wanted to confirm you're getting power to your fuel pump, you'll know what wires to access up in front of the tank. I'll show that to you later on here. So now let me see if I can get me a snap ring pliers on this snap ring and get this loose. Okay, just to show you, all it needed was a pair of snap ring pliers. In fact, there's very little tension on it. You can just use a small screwdriver most likely and get it loose that way. So really don't need any special tools. A screwdriver would do just the same. Well, it took very little effort. Once I took the snap ring off, I just kind of wiggled it a little bit. It popped loose. That great big rubber O-ring keeps the seal. But I'm gonna have to get two hands on this to slowly work it out and not drop any crud in there. So as you can see, I got it out. I had plenty of room to lift it up, get it out of the hole. I'm gonna try to pull it off here to the side where I can get access to the lines. I'm gonna tag the lines first, because I know one is just the vent line that goes to those charcoal canisters, but the other two, the inlet and outlet, they're both the same size line, so you could easily mix them up. So let me get those tagged so that doesn't happen to me. So I was just under there about ready to take the fuel line loose, and then it dawned on me there's probably still pressure on that line. So I'm gonna come up here, because I don't have a Schrader valve anymore, because I attached this fuel gauge to it. So this is a sending unit. So I'm gonna loosen up this fitting, and that way I can bleed off the pressure. How much is in there? Get it loose. All right. Okay, wasn't too much, but at least I'm not going to get a surprise and get a bunch of fuel sprayed in my eyes. All right, so it's time to get these lines loose. Now, I keep with me, I travel with a set of these, because you never know when you need to take a fuel line loose. This is what you need to do it with. And so this, pretty simple. We just push it up there and it'll release. The fumes, where the fumes go out to the evaporation tank, I think it's called the evap. That'll be pretty easy. We just push on those clips, get that loose. But this one may be a challenge, because this little clip, I don't know, it's not going to really work around that one so well. So that may give me a little fit, but we'll figure it out. Okay, like I figured, this worked out pretty good. Just pushed it up in there and released the clips, and it came off. Just like that, and it goes flying. A little bit of gas, a little bit of gas. Catching the rag. Alrighty. And you can see those little clips. That's what you got to get pushed in. There's four of them in there. That's where that little tool, where'd it go? Look up for me. Got that tool. So you get an idea how those work. You push in there and it raises up on those little ears, and it lets it release, and those ears catch on that little piece right here. So we got that one off, and now we'll get this loose. That should, yeah, it's going to take two hands. So let me get my two fingers on it, two hands on it. Yeah, so like I thought, this came off real easy. Just pushed on these two ears. Right here is one on the bottom, one on the top, and then it comes off. Well, it should come off. It's almost off, see? All right, let me tug on it just a little bit more. Yeah, just a little extra wiggling, it popped right off. And that little piece stays on there, but I'll transfer it over to the new pump. But now, here's gonna be the tricky part, getting that little dude loose. Because with the tool I have, might not do so well for me. So I may need another tool or make another tool. Let me think about this. Well, I may not have had the right tool, but I figured out a way. So you can see what I got a little piece of plastic in here, and you can see I just got it. There it goes. All right, so it's off. Now I'm going to show you what I made. I just found me a little piece of plastic. Let me get this repositioned here and get it off. So I had to improvise. I knew I wanted something like this, but so I found me a piece of plastic tubing. Where's it at? I cut it from this. I don't even know where this came from, but I just had it in a box of junk. And so I cut me just a little sliver, because I knew it'd be about the same diameter of that. And it was skinny enough, I was able to push it in between the fuel line and this little bar here. Then after I got it in position, let me show you something here. So I knew in order to make this work, I had to have it in here, but then I had to push it forward to release those clips. There's 4 in there. So the way I accomplished that is I took my pair of needle nose pliers and just wedged in there and applied pressure. I did that. When I did, it released. I was able to pull it off. Easy peasy. So if you don't have the tools, sometimes you just got to make them. So we got that done. So one step closer. All right, so before I put the fuel pump in, I want to make a few modifications and updates. One thing I want to do is change out my fuel line that feeds the generator, my Onan generator. Because you can see this line here, been sitting there since 2004, so it's 18 years old. So I got me some new line, and you just don't want to grab any line, because remember this line's not under really pressure, it's under suction. And if you go with something real cheap, you know, something, heaven forbid, something like that, it would get hot, it'll suck together and pinch off your fuel flow. You want a high quality line. So the line I went with, this is a Gates number, 4219BF. And you can see how it's designed. It's got this like Kevlar cord wrapped around it to make it, gives it a stiff, I guess, sidewall, if you want to call it that, so it won't suck together. So but this is 1/4 inch. It's safe for fuel injection, and also more importantly, it gives you all the working pressure. But the vacuum, see, it tells you it's vacuum up to 24 inches of vacuum. It's good for, and it won't collapse. 1/4 inch and all that good stuff. So that's give you an idea of something what to look for. This costs like $15 for 4 feet, but I know I won't have to worry about it. So I'm going to put that in. Another thing I don't like how that fitting is pointing straight forward. And the reason I'm thinking about this is I did talk to another one of my YouTube subscribers. He said that when he had his tank removed, someone removed his fuel tank, put a new fuel pump in for him, and they repositioned the fuel tank just a little bit too forward, and I guess that strap up above got on top of the fuel line feeding the Onan generator, and broke it off. He was going down the road and went over a bridge crossing, and that hard thump was enough to snap that line off, and then he had gas spraying everywhere. So that's something I want to avoid, and I want to try to turn it so I can get it pointing to the left-hand side, straight over to that hole right there. That's where it needs to head out. So I'm going to see about taking that loose, and also I'll see about my options of extending the pickup tube, because with ours, the generator shuts off about 1/3 of a tank, and I want it to run longer than that. So I'm going to see if I can extend that pipe a little bit closer to the bottom of the tank. So let me get some tools. Okay, so I've been strategizing, trying to figure out how I'm going to extend this pipe. A couple different thoughts. Thought about a rubber piece of hose, but still, it's larger than my hole in the tank. The hole in my tank, that's only a 1/2 inch diameter. So even if I use this piece of 3/8 fuel line, it's larger than 1/2 inch. I'm sure there's probably maybe some thinner wall fuel line you could use out there. If you go that route, be aware you need to get something that's designed to be submersible, be soaked in fuel at all times. So anyway, so that's not going to work for me. So then I got to thinking, okay, could I use like a compression fitting or something, a copper compression fitting, but it too is too large of diameter. I couldn't get it down inside the tank. So then I got to thinking, do I have something that's designed to be submersed in fuel all the time? Then I got to thinking, oh, the fuel pumps that I just dissected. So back here on my bench, if you saw my previous video on OEM versus aftermarket fuel pumps, which I think is a very interesting video, you should check it out. Anyway, here's the remnants of one. This is the old Walbro / supposedly to work in a Workhorse, but doesn't really do it very well. Well, this is the return hose that fits here. So it's designed to be submersed in fuel at all times. So I pulled that off, and I thought, let's see if that'll fit. And it fits just right, because that's a 3/8 line, and it's good and snug fit. All right. But then I had to make sure that it stays in place, that it don't fall off. So I needed some sort of clamp, but still I need a clamp that doesn't get any larger than a 1/2 inch. So I can't use a conventional spiral clamp. It would be way too large. So I got to thinking about our lawnmowers, because on the lawnmower shop I'm always dealing with these lawnmower parts. So in the lawnmower world we have these little spring-loaded clamps, because they're on lawnmowers and they're usually gravity fed, so they're not a high pressure situation. So these little spring-loaded clamps work great. Now this clamp is designed for like your standard 1/4-inch fuel hose, braided fuel hose. And this is like for 5/16, something small. Then there's an in-between size, this little green one here. It's designed for a 1/4-inch thin wall. And what I did, you notice the difference here. It did have long ears on it. If I left those long ears, I couldn't use it. But I ground those off with a grinder. And now I can slide this on here. Come on, put the camera in the spot. I'll get my pliers on here and I'll squeeze it. Change hands. All right, so we just give it a little squeeze. Come down. Get it on there right where I want it. And then release. All right, so now that's going to give it a tight fit and it won't be coming off. And I just got to cut it to the length I want. Because remember, let me see, to the bottom of the tank, it'd be about the end of the gray hose. So I'll probably hit it about halfway. I'll probably leave about 2 inches of fuel in the tank before the generator runs out of fuel. So I think it'll work pretty good for me. So I'll cut this off to where I want it, and then we'll do a test run, make sure this fits down in the fuel tank, that it clears. Okay, so I thought I'd show another option. So I'm going to go with this because it really fits nice. It's nice hard piece of plastic, and it's nice and straight. And I got to thinking, well, average Joe's not going to have this piece of plastic, but you're going to have your old fuel pump. If you're installing a fuel pump, you're going to have your old one, and this is designed to be submerged all the time. So what I did, I took my old fuel pump, and I took my heat gun here, and I heated up. This line was sitting on that barb fitting. And you have to heat it up pretty good. Be careful, don't get it so hot it starts to melt in it. But while it's still warm, take a pair of pliers and start squeezing it around it, and that will kind of stretch the plastic a little bit. And then you can start tugging and pulling on. You'll get it off that barb fitting. And once you get on that barb fitting, it will fit over this metal pipe because it's 3/8. But it's pretty stiff plastic. And then heat it up again. Put the clamp on here. Then take the heat gun, get it good and warm. That'll soften the plastic and let that clamp squeeze down good and tight. So that is a really good, solid fit. So that won't go nowhere. So that's an option you could do pretty easy if you're changing your fuel pump. Let's see if let me change hands. Okay, I'm back. Now see what a nice snug fit this is? Even though it came off that barb fitting, it was kind of jacked up a while ago. I stuck it on here. Then put the clamp on it, then heated it up with my heat gun. And that softened the plastic up to make it a nice form fit. By the time you put the clamp on there, you'll be good to go. But what I'm going to go with, because I've already got it made up here, is this piece. I really like how it fits. Really snug. Okay. And I just put my little clamp on here. And open it up, put that on there. And then we'll go give it a test run, put it back in the fuel tank. All right, so I think this is going to be my final. I measured, I'm about 2.5 inches longer than I was before. And I'll still give me about 1.5 inches of fuel in the bottom of the tank. But I started to take this spiral hose clamp. I don't like these crazy things. And here's an example why. Look, it's stripped out. So even though this was holding this is my fuel line to my Onan generator, and it was stripped out. Luckily, it wasn't giving me any trouble, but maybe in the future it would. So, see, I can't even get. I'm gonna have to cut the thing off or something. So I'm gonna get that off there, and I'm gonna go back with a clamp like this, and those are a whole lot better on fuel lines. Once you squeeze them down, they're one-time use. But hopefully, I'll put this together. I'll never see it again for 18 years or better. All right, just to show you that it does work. All right, coming in here. You can see where I cut those little ears off to make it shorter. Ta-da! like it, I like it. So I'm gonna come back now. I'm gonna take it back out. I'm actually gonna put me some thread dope on those threads, and I may go ahead and put my line on here and then put it installed. So let's do that. All right, let's see if we can do this with one hand. So I've got my clamp on here, got the hose on. It's good and snug already as is. So we can try to pinch it down and see how it works. Yep. Use a little bit more. All right. That's pretty cool. Nice tight fit. Amazing how those things work. And it's stainless steel, so it won't rust. And we should be in good shape for a good long time. I like that other spiral one that had already stripped out and was acting up. All right, so we'll get me some dope on here and thread that in the tank, and we'll have this part done. All right, so I got a new challenge, trying to create me an access door to my fuel pump on my 38J Winnebago. I realize not all RVs you can do this to, but on this one I think it'll work. I've already got the tank out because I'm putting in a fuel pump, but I kind of measured where center was. I went all the way to the black. See the metal there? I measured from it, and I measured to this piece. Kind of got it in the middle. It's about center is about 4 foot 1 inch. So maybe one slice. It's kind of a pain because it's very narrow here. You kind of squeeze your body up in there and make a cut. And I'll show you what it looks like from underneath. So one reason why you gotta be so careful with this. Okay, so you see where I put that stick. I had to pop down those are hydraulic lines. I had to move those out of the way when I made my cut. So I've got one cut. I gotta do 3 more before I can get this out of there. But I was thinking, I mean, yeah, if you wanted to do this yourself while the tank was still in place, how would you do that? I guess you could carefully, if the tank was raised, you'd have to carefully run you some boards or something in there to create a shield so you wouldn't get into your hydraulic lines. Or if you have a scope, you know, those endoscopes, you can look in there and see where you're at and pull the lines off to one side or the other. Maybe you don't have any lines at all in your way, but you just want to look carefully before you start cutting. So, all right, let's do some more cutting. All right, just so you can follow along what I've done here. I've got my marks laid out. It's about a 16 by 12 inch. So I done drilled me a hole here. And I went back and drilled another one way back in there because I got to get the jigsaw. Got to come from this way over and back and forth. So it's a little tricky. I got to get me a pilot hole right here because there's no way I can reach from the other side because I got that little bitty hole. So I have to do everything from this end, and it's just a little snug. Job for a skinny man for sure. And also you can see you need kind of a low profile jigsaw. I had 3 different ones. Luckily I found this one here that would fit. I had 2 others, they was both too tall. But this is working out pretty good. I've just got one more cut to make and I should have a big hole. Well, there it is. A nice big hole. All right. That'll come in handy, I think. So let's go see what it looks like from the bottom. Okay, so here it looks like from the bottom. Nice, good access hole. So in the future, if I need to get to my fuel pump, which the fuel pump is right there. I covered it up so we wouldn't get no crud in it. And so I'm just, alrighty. Well, that's how you do that anyways. Alright, so here's my brand new fuel pump, fresh from Brazel's RV. Notice this is an OEM fuel pump. This is not an aftermarket cheapy knockoff fuel pump that will cause you all sorts of grief and trouble. In fact, I'm going to do a cutaway video that I've already made before showing the weight and just a little bit of differences between the two. And I made a specific video doing a teardown showing all the differences in quality, and there's a lot between an OEM and an aftermarket. You can see briefly here, there's what's left in an aftermarket fuel pump where it had already failed. little small fuel pump compared to these big massive fuel pumps that we get from the OEM Delphi fuel pump. So anyways, I'll cut into that and then we'll get back to reassembling this and getting this RV back together. So here's another quick test just to show you the difference between an OEM fuel pump and an aftermarket fuel pump. See here, we got an aftermarket fuel pump. This fits the Workhorse chassis. So our aftermarket fuel pump, if I can get it to balance. Come on, balance for me. It was balancing a while ago. It don't. Oh, my bull butter. Okay, there it is. So we got 1 pound, 15.9 ounces. So a little less than 2 pounds. All right, so let's take that off. Now, fresh from Brazel's RV, got a brand new OEM fuel pump. Now you can see at first glance, they look very similar, virtually identical. You look at the top and everything. But now let's look at the weight. Okay, so this comes in at 2 pounds, 9.4 ounces. So there's almost 1 pound difference. But to look at them, they look virtually identical. But you can tell there's a lot more to it with your OEM fuel pumps. All right, just another tip for you, because you may get to the point to trying to get the center line off. Could be a pain for you. It was for me. Remember, I had to make this little tool, and it worked the first time. So as a test, I thought, well, let me try it again, because now I'm fixing to reassemble. This is my old fuel pump that I've gutted and done some experiments with. So I thought, well, let me try cutting this in half, where I thought I could put half on one side and half on the bottom, which I did that. I had it installed just like that, but still it wasn't enough to release all 4 pins at the same time. So the way I finally got it off the second time, I've been mucking with it for 30 minutes, I just used a small skinny screwdriver. Because remember, when here's what we're looking at. There's a fuel line, see those 4 little clips? So when that gets pushed up and over, it grabs behind this piece. So you have to get all 4 depressed at the same time, which is kind of difficult to do. But the way I found out is I just took a long skinny screwdriver and I you got to figure this is going to be plugged up at the time you're pulling on it. And as you pull, maintain pressure. As you maintain pressure, just go in and apply pressure, trip each one individually. You got 4 of them. Once you trip them, as long as you're pulling on it, it'll hold it in place. That way, you may have to rotate it at the same time, hold pressure, rotate it, so you get around to trip all 4. Then, boop, it popped right off for me. So I thought I'd point that out. That's just another way to get that off. And because that center one can be a real booger. The other one's no problem. But I even bought another tool here just thinking it would help. But this didn't help. This was useless. That was no good at all. But at least I would say carry these. And remember my little tool I made here. I even experimented. I made something like this trying to get in there. That didn't work for me so good. But the long skinny screwdriver did it. Anyways, we got that done, so let's start putting this in. So before I install this fuel pump and I have access to the wiring and wiring harness, I'm going to document what wire does what. So I've pulled back I've pulled back the wire loom so we see what colors is what. And when it's plugged in, it's like this. And so we can see here. So we got black wire that's large. We have a gray wire that's large. And then we got a small purple and another small black wire. So the gray wire, if you go to your wiring harness, that is the positive wire. So we need 12 volts positive to feed the fuel pump. And then it's the large black wire right here. That is our ground wire to the fuel pump. And then these are for the sending unit. You got the small black is ground, the small purple is your positive. So that will kind of give you an idea. And these wires run continuously all the way up to the firewall, the best I can tell. Now they do, because they run up in the frame up real high, they do poke out just past the fuel tank. And I'll notate their position here when I get on that end of the fuel tank and show you where you can kind of access them. So In the future, you could always, you know, pin out these wires just to confirm you're getting 12 volts back to your fuel pump. If in the future you're troubleshooting your fuel pump, you want to make sure it's bad before you go replacing it and dropping the tank. This is one way you could do that. So, all right, so let's try to get our hoses connected up, I guess, and carefully get up in this tank and not get anything dirty. Okay, well, I got the camera propped up here. See if I can record this. I got me some silicone grease, and I've put it inside this area here, in this metal ring, so hope I can help facilitate getting this O-ring in here, and also I'll put some on this big large O-ring. So let's see if we can get it in the shot and drop this in there and not get anything, and not get no dirt on it. That's my goal. The awkward. All right, here we go. There we go. That wasn't so hard now, was it? All right, now I just got to get that lined up and pressed in. There it goes. All right. Okay, so I'm going to have to come around the other side, press down on this, and then get where's my snap ring at? I got a snap ring here somewhere. I lost it. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. And I'll get that put in place. And then we can hook up our wires, hook up our hoses, and turn on the key, make sure I got pressure and see what kind of pressures I got. And another tip, if you're in a tight spot, use a mirror to look down and make sure your snap ring is seated all the way around and that you've got that in that tab. So there's a little tab you want to lock that into. Make sure that's in position. So that's pretty much all there is to that. So we'll hook up some lines and some wires, and we'll be ready for a test here. And also what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little dab of that silicone grease on these connections here. Maybe, you know, add just a little bit of lubrication to those old 18-year-old O-rings that's up inside those hoses. That's our, what's this thing called? Evap line. That's what this is. Oops. So I'll put the evap line on first. Good click. Remember, I tagged my hoses. This is the inlet, goes in the center. All right, got the outlet. There we go. All right, let me just go plug up the wire harness. Actually, I need to let me retape this before I do. Okay, you can see I got it taped up good now. And don't forget your little lock that goes on there. Right there it goes. Now she's locked. All right. Now let's go see if the thing will start up. Okay, I'm just kind of, well, get my hand off. All right. I'm kind of experimenting here. I just turned the key on. I hadn't cranked yet. Because remember when our system is on these 8.1 Vortec engines, when you turn the key on, the fuel pump is energized for maybe 2 seconds, I believe, just briefly. And then when you actually go into the start position, then the fuel pump is on and stays on. So I noticed when I first turned the key on, it pumped up to, I had 2 PSI. Okay, I turned the key off, turn it back on, now I'm 13. I'm going to cycle it again just to see what it comes up to. Because remember, there's a lot of air in the lines. So, all right, key back on. Okay, so now Now I'm up to 48. All right, key off and back on one more time before I start. I don't know if you heard or not, but I heard a funny sound. I guess it's pushing air out, probably through the return line. So let me do it one more time. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try something different. Instead of starting the engine, I'm going to manually turn the fuel pump on. Let's do that. Let me come in, key on one more time. I'm going to show you a new toy I got. Let's see what we got up to now. All right, it's 51 PSI. Let me show you a new... All right, quit your beating. All right, let me show you a new toy I got. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the fuel pump relay out. And I'm going to put this little device in there. And when I flip on the switch, make sure I got it in there right. Now when I flip the switch on, the fuel pump should come on. I hear it. Okay. Let's go listen to it. Pop up a storm. Everything looks good. No leaks. Now let's go see what kind of pressure we got. Alright, we're sitting at 58 PSI. Okay, now let's start the engine up and see how it does. Alright, we're running at 59 PSI. Alright, as you can see now I'm in front of the fuel tank here. So for future reference, if a person ever needed to confirm that there's getting power to the fuel pump and you want to know what wire it is, well, here's the wire harness. See how it drops down to the fuel pump, and it ties in to the main harness on the fuel rail right here just behind the tank. And remember our colors, so the fuel pump is we got a large black and a large gray on that powers the fuel pump, and the black of course is ground, the gray was the positive. Then we got two smaller wires, that was the purple and small black, that's for the sending unit. Now you can also see the wires back here. That made it a little bit easier to get to. So there's the black and gray. That's black and gray right there. That would be the fuel pump. And we got these two smaller wires, is the purple and the black behind it. Actually, maybe that's the gray. No, there's the gray down there. Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah. But I don't know. Now these two wires are pretty close in color. So if you had to do this test, probably I would suggest untaping this and getting in here and test for power. As long as you got wire power in the ground, then your fuel pump's still not working, then you know your fuel pump is at fault. Because I don't believe there's anywhere that you can actually where a disconnect anywhere between here and the firewall. I believe it's all one wire. So, because I don't like the idea of opening up, cutting into wires. But if you got one of those little type of where you can just pierce the wire with this little bitty pin and measure for power, that's okay. But I don't like cutting into wire harnesses. Try to keep them sealed up best you can. Alrighty, so I think we're about ready to start raising this fuel tank up where it belongs. Oh, there's something I noticed under here. Where was it? Another good idea while you have these straps loose, these little rubber straps here. Look for it, because I took this off. See, like there's a little rock. Right there, that little piece of rock. There's another one. I don't know how they get up under there, but they could sit there and work long enough. They could probably cause rust, cause issue with your fuel tank. In fact, I think I've heard of that before. Sometimes these things do rust out. Maybe where they have spot welds, where they put baffles in them, and they sometimes fail and cause trouble. So just while you're under there, look around at everything really good. Check it all out. Biggest thing is being observant. You'll always find something that don't belong. So I'm gonna wipe that out really good and make sure this rubber strap is good and clean. I'm gonna do that on all four before I start lifting the tank back up in place. And try to be mindful. See, there's a little stop here so the tank don't go too far. And remember how I repositioned my my fitting for the Onan generator pickup? I relocated it because it was pointing straight out toward the front of the RV. And I talked to a friend of mine, his got broke off. And after they had a fuel tank removed and installed, they repositioned it wrong and snapped it off when he was driving down the road. Made for a bad day with gas going everywhere. All right, let's start raising this tank up. So I got to wondering, because I know my old fuel pump consistently gave me 60, 61 PSI. My new one is sitting like 58, 59. So I pulled out the specs on the 8.1 Vortec. So what we're looking for is 55 to 62 PSI. So I'm parked at 58, 59, so I'm in spec. So that's good to know. Another little fix I found. You see how the marking is right here? The wiring harness came loose and was laying down here in the bottom of the frame. It came loose on both places. That whole wiring harness is laying down at the bottom next to the tank instead of up high where it's supposed to be when it left the factory. And what's happening is these little push connector things aren't staying put. But I found something to make them stay put. So let me show you. Just shove it through there. See, it's not holding very good at all. But we go on the back side. So we'll go on the back side right there. It is. Get us a 5/16 nut, and it'll fit right on there. And it screws on there nice and snug. Get a little socket on it. And that should keep that wiring harness up where it belongs. So I did that on the other two up front. There we go. Ta-da! Easy peasy. So you may wonder why it's so hard to get siphon of fuel out of the RV. You see these, I guess these are like anti-drain. If there was an accident in the rubber neck, this thing up here got pulled off, or a rollover situation, the gas can't flow out, these little flapper doors. But you can see why when you put a piece of fuel line in there, trying to siphon fuel out, you know, if you hit that bar, you ain't gonna go through. You gotta get just like that. It's gotta be like, so that's just a small 1/4 inch fuel hose. So that could possibly work, but if anything bigger, it is not going to work. You're not going to get no fuel out of it. And just in case you're wondering, of course, you good luck. You'd probably never get a hose in this thing anyway. It twists and turns so many times. So anyhow, just in case you needed to know, now you know. All right, now it's time to raise the tank up. Now let me show you how cool this is. Now I'm going to make sure I got my rubber strap in place. Yep, everything's good. And get my little impact drill here. Let's see if we can't raise it up. Alright, let's go to the other side, raise it some more. Cool beans, cool beans. We need to patent this. Alright. Well, one thing we need to make sure is that lock nut doesn't come loose. That's why I mentioned earlier, going slow and careful. If that lock nut came loose, then the weight of the tank is going to drop. So probably using a ratchet would probably be smarter. I'm trying to go slow. See that? See, if that was to unscrew, then the weight of the tank would drop. I did use a locking nut. Probably better if I had room to put 2 jamming nuts like I did this, jam them together really tight. That way nothing's coming loose. And you see how it's looking? Getting close, getting close. How many people can put in a 80-gallon fuel tank one-handed? Or is it 75? I forget. But looking good, looking good. Checking on my ports and stuff, make sure nothing's in the way, going to get hit. You can tell it's starting to get heavy. I probably need to go to the front side. Well, you get the idea, because see now I've got the rear is higher than the front. So I'm gonna go up front and raise it up just a little bit more. I don't have, well, we got another 6 inches to go. Alright, so here's a good pointer about taking your time. Watch what you're doing. Because you see that line there going to my evap tank? It's actually underneath the strap. So I need to push it up. There we go, like that. Now if I hadn't saw that and I just went willy-nilly and raised that tank up without noticing, that could have gave me trouble in the future. So, just take your time, and that's why you want good light too, so you can see what the heck's going on. Alright, now let's see if we can't raise this up some more. Because now of course we're on the front side of the tank. See what it looks like here. Little by little, we're getting there. Getting to the last little bit now, don't like much. See how close we are. Yeah, it's on the front, just like about another 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Alright, one last look. I've only got a couple inches to go now. And all my lines look good. You can see my access hole for the future if I ever have to get back in this thing again. So, see if we can't snug it up. Almost there. Okay, change of plans. Remember I had that locking nut on top. We can't trust that locking nut because it kept coming, I had one kept coming loose on me. So I checked, we do have room to double nut the top. So you can double nut it, jam the 2 nuts together so they're not going to come loose at all. And so then you can take your time, you can go slow. Get your one of these ratchet wrenches, 3/4. Just get up here. Well, you have to hold the bottom one. Anyway, you get the idea. Just you can go slowly. Let me see if I can hold that. There you go. Take your time and bring the tank up where it needs to be. Because you want to be, safe about this. And I just don't trust those locking nuts. I wouldn't want someone to get in a hurry and have one of those locking nuts unscrew and have that tank come down. But with those double jam nuts, there's no risk of that. Using an impact or a drill is probably not wise. It's probably wiser just to do a hand, like a ratchet wrench or something like that. Something a little bit slower and safer. Take your time. All right, you see the tank's all the way up, and now that I've got my center straps in place, I don't have them tightened up yet. I just got them snugged up, and now I'm going to remove the all thread pieces, and then put my regular little T-bolts in there, just like these, and then finish snugging all of them up at the same time, kind of crisscross pattern, and get it all the way back in place where she needs to be, and we'll have this project done. So for those of you that might happen to have a 38J, and you want to try to cut a hole, try to get this in here where you can see. You see those lines and stuff, you can see that hole. So the tank is all the way up at the moment. You see how tight it is. So you have to get a board or something in there and make sure you got all those hydraulic lines and stuff pushed down out of the way, or slide you a piece of paneling or something up in there. So as you use a jigsaw, just use a short blade that'll just slice through that hole and won't get a hold of anything below. Just to give you an idea, you know, you can use your phone, take some pictures, videos, and see what you're looking into. So before you cut anything. So if you're wondering, here's what it looks like once the hole's made. Fuel pump is right there, easy to get to, easy peasy. I just got to fix my door now so I can make it get a good seal on it when I close it back up. So let's see how my little trap door turned out. So here it is. If I need to get to my fuel pump in the future, just lift this up. Snug fit. There it is. And get right in there. Ta-da! Big poke. Okay, there you go. I just attach me a piece of thin plywood to the bottom of that piece, and it's a nice snug fit. All you gotta do. There you go. Make yours today for your 38J. Alright, so before I button everything else up, remember I extended the pickup tube on my Onan generator. So let's see if we can't prime it up and get it to start. Still pumping. It's kind of loud there at first, like it's because I had no fuel. Alright, let's see if she'll fire up. Oh, I got off the finger too quick. Notice my cool little exhaust pipe. I got it running outside. It comes in handy when you're in a building. You need to fire up your generator. That'll be nice. Now I don't have to worry about that running out generator dying on me about like a quarter of a tank like it used to. So now I get a little bit more run time out of it. So I'm going to finish my connection here on the right hand side. You see the filler neck and vent tube. This is on the right hand side, the passenger side, which is just plugged off because they designed these chassis to be filled from either side. So, and I just want to point out, even from the factory, say these special one-time use clamps, even from the factory they put those on here because they absolutely don't want them leaking. So this is a great thing to add to your toolbox, these little assortment of clamps. If you want a really good seal, something's not going to come loose on you. And here's the one for the vent. So, of course they do still use the spiral, you know, so you can get them on and off, the part that connects closer to the tank. So I just got to slip those on, tighten those up, then I'll get over to the left hand side and do the same over there. Alright, this side is done. If you're keeping up, that's an 8mm socket on this side, 6mm on that side. So while I was under here finishing up the fuel tank install, I thought I'd mention to you, because I saw the fuel filter here, the flow. Remember on the fuel pump, we have an outlet and an inlet. So this is the outlet. So we're pumping out 61 psi. It comes in through the filter. It comes in here to this T. It goes up, loops around. It goes right back to the tank. Remember on our fuel pump, we have an inlet and an outlet. Where this is the inlet going back, this is the outlet. So imagine you start your engine, you're sitting there idling. This line goes on up to the engine. So we're just sitting there idling, very little fuel is being used. But remember, you can't compress liquid. It's got to flow. It's got to completely flow constantly. So it's always flowing back to the pump. You're trying to keep it self-cool. Remember how the gas pours over top of you. Watch my video on the dissection of the fuel pump. You see how it's made like a little canister, and fresh fuel is constantly being poured over it to try to keep it cool. So your fuel pressure is coming in, hits here, loops, goes back. It's always doing that constantly. A nice, good flow. Now, this is 2004 and newer. This is the way it works. On your older RVs, they had a line that went all the way up to the engine, to the fuel rail, then came all the way back. But it posed problems, I guess, with emissions or whatever, heated up the fuel more, and so they redesigned it like this. And then also on the older models, you have your fuel regulator is actually on the fuel rail on the driver's side, where with us, our regulator, when you got a 2004 newer, the fuel pump regulator is inside the fuel tank. What you see on your fuel rail is a fuel dampener. People confuse it. They think they're looking at a fuel regulator on the fuel rail, but if there's no vacuum line hooked to it, it's not a fuel regulator on the fuel rail. That's just a fuel dampener. Take out the pulses. And this other line here that you're seeing, remember we had those 3 connections on the fuel pump. This one is the vapor line, or the evap tank. It goes back for the fumes, and they go right over here into these, I think these are charcoal canisters, and then there are some valves and stuff on it. Certain times it opens up and feeds the fumes into the engine and gets reburned. So that's where that goes, in case you was wondering. Thought I'd just point that out while I was under here. Alright, final walkthrough on a few things. Make sure these grounds are back on. You got your ground strap for your fuel tank. You got the ground strap for these pipes that were between the rubber section and the metal pipe, or your fill tube pipe that goes up to the outside of the RV. Make sure that strap's in good shape. Make sure it's mounted to the frame, the chassis. Hose clamps are all tight, got all them snug. Put in a new clamp here for the Onan generator. So getting everything in good shape. Do one more walk through it and make sure I'm not missing anything, but I think about got this wrapped up. Alright, well, this fuel tank job is all finished and over with. Getting the fuel pump in, fuel tank's back up. I'm packing up all my tools, getting ready for the next project. But I wanted to recap and talk about what I would do differently now that I know what I know. First of all, what I would have done, because I'm fortunate enough to own a 38J, I wouldn't have lowered the fuel tank at all. I would have done this right here, where I've created that little access door. But there's some precautions that's got to be done before you do this. And I'll make a separate video just for that. So for you 38J owners out there, if you want to change your fuel pump, that'll help give you some guidance on what you need to do, so you can do it safely and not cut into anything vital like hydraulic lines and wiring harnesses. So that's one thing. But for those of you who don't have that option, where you're going to have to lower the fuel tank in order to change the fuel pump, some things I would have done differently. I would have numbered these straps. I would have made sure each strap went back in the same position. Same way with those little T-bolts, because all you got to do is loosen the lower nut. Now on the front and rear, I did have to remove the T-bolt completely, because I had to put in this piece of all thread to lower it down. But I would make note of where each T-bolt came out of and try to put it back in the same place. And usually you can tell where the nut's location is by the discoloration in the threads. So just so everything kind of goes back the way we found it. I think I got everything good and close and nice and snug. That's something I would have done. Something I would have been a lot safer about when I came up with using this. Oh, and I need to give a shout out to Jerry. I got this idea from Jerry. He's one of my YouTube subscribers. This is how he did his tank last year. He sent me a picture. and show me how he was using a piece of all thread. So, but instead of using just a single locking nut, so I was relying on that locking nut to hold. But worst case scenario, if that locking nut had unscrewed, that could have been bad. You know, the tank could have dropped down suddenly. I wouldn't like that. So, in hindsight, I should have double nutted it, jammed the two nuts together good and tight, so there's no chance of them loosening up while I was lowering the tank, because there's quite a bit of weight sitting on that nut as it's being unscrewed. So that's, I would have done that differently. Let's see, what else would I have done? Oh yeah, I probably wouldn't have used the impact wrench. That was it was kind of cool and quick, made for a good video, but in hindsight, it'd been better off to just use a ratchet wrench, a 3/4 ratchet wrench right here. That thing is great. Just gonna click, 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 and just go around, you know, like on both sides, you know, do about 10 strokes on one, 10 on the other, and just work your way till you lower the tank down. Ratchet wrench would probably been a smarter way to go. Just slow and steady. Don't get crazy. What else did I want? Would I have done differently? I guess probably something else I would have done is probably set something under the tank, you know, like a floor jack or anything, couple big boxes, just anything. Worst case scenario, if the tank got away from you, it had something to land on instead of going all the way to the ground, because I didn't have anything under here. Another thing I would have done is probably remove more fuel, because I had about a half a tank of fuel in there, so I had a lot of weight I was dealing with. Because remember, I started out with a complete full tank of gas. I filled up every vehicle I had, trying to get rid of the 40 gallons. So that's something else. Another thing I'll talk about, tools. Really didn't need anything special. I'll put a link to these little clamps, one-eared clamps, or whatever they're called. Ear clamp, pincer. But these are great, especially when you're dealing with fuel lines. Like, for instance, when I was hooking up the fuel line back to my generator, it had a little spiral clamp on it, and I went to tighten it up, and it was already stripped. So instead of doing that, I went back with one of these. And you saw that in the video. I love these hose clamps. This is probably something good to keep with you in your RV. I'm gonna start carrying this with me. You'll need one of these. I carry this all the time, because we have fuel lines up front, rear, and even if you're not changing a fuel pump, if you just need to check for fuel pressure or something, or you need to change something on the road, it's cheap enough, light enough, not gonna be no issue. This little tool was kind of useless, really. And even using these, remember that center one? That center one there was kind of a pain to get off. And remember, I ended up, one time using the screwdriver to flip those 4 little ears to get it loose. And maybe there's a better tool for this centerpiece, but I just haven't found it yet. But those they did work. What else we tool-wise? Just my standard, Harbor Freight Pittsburgh socket set. This thing's great. Usually has everything I need when I crawl underneath an RV. A couple of 3/4 inch wrenches. My little snap ring pliers somewhere. Here they are. I used those. So nothing too special. Didn't take that much. So anyway, so this project's all finished up and done. Turned out really well, I think. So I guess that's all I got to say about that. You guys have a blessed night, blessed day. We'll talk at you later. See you, bye.